There's something strange about the days leading up to your wedding. Everyone tells you it's supposed to be the happiest time of your life. But for me, it felt more like floating, like I was watching it all happen from just outside my own body. The dress had been fitted to perfection, the flowers were ordered, and our honeymoon was fully paid. A private island. 5 stars. No cell service. I should have been glowing. Instead, I was quiet. Too quiet. Eric was buzzing with energy, calling vendors, finalizing the playlist, picking up his tux. He kept looking at me with that smirk, like we had a secret no one else knew. And for a while, I let myself believe in it. In us. We had a story, after all. We met by accident at a bookstore of all places, reaching for the same copy of some obscure poetry collection. He was funny, charming, confident. I hadn't seen the cracks yet. Or maybe I had, and I just didn't want to look. Then, one night, I couldn't sleep. The kind of restless where your skin itches and your thoughts won't quit spinning. Eric had left his tablet open on the kitchen counter. Normally I wouldn't snoop, I swear, I'm not that kind of person. But something in me shifted, like a nudge from my own gut. I tapped the screen, and there it was. A string of messages, raw, explicit. Old enough to confirm it wasn't just a one-time thing. New enough to sting. Including one from the night of our engagement party. I didn't cry. Not right away. I just sat there, blinking, my tea going cold in my hand. The silence in the apartment was heavy, like it knew something too. I felt like the floor should have cracked open beneath me, but it didn't. I didn't scream. I didn't pack a bag. I just stood up, walked to the mirror, and stared at my reflection like I was waiting for her to tell me what to do next. And in that moment, I made a decision. But not the one you'd expect. I didn't confront him. I didn't throw the tablet or scream accusations across the room. I smiled when he walked in, asked how the tasting went, kissed his cheek. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't always explode. Sometimes it simmers. And I let it. Every word he said after that was like a little performance for me, a front-row seat to the show of a man who thought he was still getting away with it. I started canceling things, one by one. I called the florist and told her there'd been a change of plans. I emailed the caterers, the string quartet, even the shuttle service for the guests. But I didn't cancel the honeymoon. That part, I kept. I let Eric think I was just overwhelmed. Bride stuff, you know? Too much on my plate, I'd say, and he'd nod, relieved, clueless. It was almost insulting how easy it was to fool him. But I wasn't playing games. I was creating space. At night, I'd lie awake next to him and wonder how many lies a person could tell before they stopped recognizing their own voice. He'd sleep soundly, like a man without guilt. I used to envy that. Now, it just made me sick. But I kept it all to myself. My silence became a kind of armor, a thick layer of calm over something wild and burning underneath. I didn't even know I had that in me. The strangest part? I didn't feel heartbroken, not in the way I expected. I felt released. Like I'd been holding my breath for years and hadn't realized it until that night. It wasn't sadness that kept me up. It was clarity. I was done pretending. But I wasn't done planning. Not yet. There was still one final performance to orchestrate, and I wanted every single detail to be perfect. The days moved fast after that. Faster than I expected. Everyone was calling. My mom about her dress, my maid of honor about the playlist, his sister asking if the kids could bring bubbles instead of flower petals. And through it all, I smiled. I said all the right things. I kept the illusion alive because I needed the ending to feel clean, controlled, mine. The night before, what should have been the happiest day of my life, I packed a suitcase. Just one. No dress, no veil, no vows. I folded soft linen tops and breezy skirts, sandals for the beach, a few books I hadn't had time to read. I laid a silk robe on top and zipped it up slowly, like sealing a letter I'd been writing for months. He was out running some last-minute errand, probably picking up cufflinks or calling his groomsmen. He had no idea what was coming. Before bed, I stood by the window with a glass of wine, watching the city flicker in gold and blue. It was beautiful, still. But I felt detached, like the version of me who'd once wanted this life with him had already left the building. What surprised me was how calm I was. No shaking hands, no second thoughts. Just a quiet resolve humming in my bones. I wasn't walking into a wedding. I was walking away from a trap. And the best part? He didn't suspect a thing. That was the gift he gave me, his arrogance. It made everything possible. He believed so deeply in his ability to control the story, to stay adored, to keep the lies buried. And I let him. I let him go to sleep that night, dreaming of vows and forever, while I drifted off knowing the truth would wake him up in ways he never saw coming. The morning of the wedding was quiet, almost too quiet. I woke up before the sun, stretched beneath the weight of soft sheets, and stared at the ceiling like it might offer me one last warning. But nothing came, just stillness. I poured myself a cup of coffee, black, no sugar. I watched the steam rise as the world outside started to move, completely unaware that I wouldn't be showing up. Eric was already at the venue, or at least on his way. I imagined him pacing the aisle, smoothing his tie, maybe texting me something sweet or anxious. He had no clue the staff had been canceled. The flowers wouldn't arrive. The officiant never confirmed. The photographer, bless her, was told the night before that there'd been a family emergency. Everyone else? They'd find out the hard way. At the door, in silence. My phone buzzed. It was my maid of honor. I let it ring. Then his mom. I watched the name light up, then fade. It was like a storm building in real time, but I was already safe on the other side of it. I got dressed slowly. Nothing fancy. Just soft jeans, a white tank, and a cardigan I'd worn on our second date. I think a part of me liked the poetry of that. Full circle. A quiet end wrapped in familiar fabric. And when the moment felt right, I sent the text. Just one line. No emojis. No explanation. I typed it without hesitation, my thumb hovering for only a second before I hit send. Check your email. That was it. That was the veil drop. My version of an altar walk. Except I was walking away, not toward, and I didn't look back. I imagined the look on his face when he read it. The subject line alone was enough to gut him. You were never worth the aisle. And inside, every single message, screenshots, timestamps, her name, her face, even the one from the night we toasted with champagne and announced our engagement to a room full of people who thought love looked like us. It wasn't just betrayal. It was arithmetic. There was no denying it, not even for him. He tried calling. Of course he did. The first time, I watched the screen light up and fade like it meant nothing. The second time, I turned off my phone altogether. Let him sit with it, let him pace that vineyard like the lost little boy he was, surrounded by empty chairs and flowers that never came. It wasn't revenge. It was reality. He'd built a story on lies. I just tore down the curtain. What most people didn't know was that everything had been in his name. The venue, the catering, the island getaway, it was all billed to his precious platinum cards. I'd insisted months ago saying, "Let me handle the logistics, babe. You just show up and smile." And he had. Willingly. It never occurred to him that the woman he was cheating on might be smarter than he gave her credit for. The guests must have been confused, whispering, wondering. Some probably thought I got cold feet. Others may have blamed him right away. But the truth had a way of seeping out, one whisper at a time. People started asking questions. Vendors started demanding answers. And I was already gone. Miles away, boarding a plane with a one-way ticket to peace. I never wanted to humiliate him. That wasn't the point. It wasn't about spectacle. It was about reclaiming something he'd slowly chipped away at without me even noticing. My dignity, my voice, my right to decide how the story ended. If he felt embarrassed, cornered, small, well, maybe that was just gravity doing its job. Actions have weight. Eventually, they land. Part of me wondered if he'd try to twist it, tell people I was unstable, dramatic, bitter. But the receipts were undeniable, black and white, filthy time-stamped proof. It's amazing how quickly sympathy shifts when the truth is handed to people like a mirror. I didn't need to explain myself. I didn't owe anyone a post-mortem. Let the inbox speak for itself. What no one really talks about is how quiet freedom feels. I was sitting in the terminal, sipping overpriced coffee, watching couples laugh and stretch their legs, and I didn't feel a single pang of regret, just space, just stillness, and a strange, subtle thrill. I wasn't running from anything. I was walking toward myself, toward something honest, something clean. And as they called my flight and I stood to board, I felt lighter than I had in years. No veil, no borrowed time. Just me and a carry-on bag filled with choices. And ahead, a horizon that belonged to me, and me alone. The plane lifted off like a promise. I watched the city shrink below me, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel tethered to anything. No expectations, no performance, just sky. I reclined my seat in first class, yes, his upgrade, and let the champagne settle warm and slow in my chest. The stewardess asked if I was celebrating something. I smiled and said, "Freedom." She laughed, not realizing how dead serious I was. The island was even more beautiful than the brochures. Turquoise water that looked photoshopped, palm trees swaying like they were dancing just for me. I checked into the honeymoon suite alone. The concierge hesitated, glanced around for a missing groom, then caught herself. "Congratulations," she said, handing me the keys. I nodded. She didn't need the story. Not everyone does. Some people can sense when you're carrying a victory disguised as silence. That first night, I didn't cry. I ordered room service, popped another bottle of champagne, and watched the sun slide into the sea from a private terrace wrapped in warm wind. I kicked off my shoes, pulled my hair into a knot, and sat with my legs tucked beneath me like I had nowhere else to be. Because I didn't. For once, there was no one waiting, no one needing anything from me. And the quiet? It was loud in the best way. I started taking pictures, not for attention, but because I wanted to remember how it felt. My feet in the sand, my face half lit by sunrise, a toast to myself by the infinity pool. I posted a few, nothing dramatic, nothing obvious, just soft captions like, "Sometimes peace finds you where you least expect it." No tags, no names, but I knew people would see and wonder. By the third day, I had a rhythm. Morning yoga by the ocean, fresh fruit and strong coffee on the balcony, then maybe a massage or a sailing excursion. Every moment was mine. I hadn't realized how much of myself I'd been giving away until I finally had space to keep it. I laughed more. I sang in the shower. I started dreaming again. Real dreams, not the brittle kind built around someone else's idea of forever. The photos started gaining traction. A few likes at first, then comments. Friends I hadn't spoken to in months wrote things like, "You look incredible. You seem so at peace." And beneath the flattery, I could feel it. That itch of curiosity. People were connecting dots they didn't even know they had. One person messaged me, "Wait, didn't your wedding just happen?" I didn't reply. Sometimes silence is louder than any explanation. And in that silence, I realized something. I didn't have to defend my choices, not to anyone, not even to myself. What happened wasn't just about heartbreak, it was about waking up, about finally understanding that love isn't supposed to make you smaller, quieter, less certain of your own instincts. Eric didn't just betray me, he underestimated me. That was his real mistake. I ordered dinner for one and asked the waiter to bring a candle anyway. Why not? I toasted myself again, to clarity, to solitude, to starting over on my own terms. And as the waves crashed softly in the distance, I leaned back in my chair feeling full, not just from the food, but from something deeper. Like I was finally coming home to a version of myself I hadn't met in years. I never mentioned his name, not once. That was important to me. This wasn't about revenge, it was about release, and I knew that keeping it vague made people lean in closer. The mystery worked in my favor. Every image I posted became a mirror. Some saw heartbreak. Others saw healing. But only I knew the full story, and that made it mine. Entirely mine. There were moments when I'd lie on the beach and wonder what he was doing, whether he was still trying to explain himself, whether the silence from me was eating away at him the way his lies once gnawed at me. But I didn't dwell on it. I let the thoughts pass like clouds. That's what healing started to look like. Not pretending it never hurt, but refusing to give the pain a permanent room. One afternoon, I was on a boat, the sun dipping low, painting the sea in honey and fire. The captain offered to take a picture, and I said yes. I stood at the bow, wind in my hair, chin high. Later, I posted it with a caption that read, "Sometimes the best vows you make are to yourself." It wasn't meant to be poetic. It was just the truth. And maybe, in a way, it was my real wedding day. The likes kept coming. The messages, too. Some from people I barely knew, some from women saying they felt seen, understood. I hadn't planned on starting anything, but it felt like something was starting anyway. Like I'd cracked open a space for honesty. Messy, brave, beautiful honesty. And even though I hadn't said a word about what happened, it was clear the story was spreading. I didn't need to be there to watch it fall apart. I could feel it, like a thread pulling loose from a sweater, slow at first, then all at once. Eric must have been scrambling, texting everyone, trying to control the narrative. But the thing about lies is they don't hold up under sunlight. And the truth? Well, she has perfect timing. People started talking. The silence I left behind was louder than anything I could have screamed. He called, a lot, different numbers, unknown ones. "Please," one voicemail said, "just talk to me." Another one? "I messed up, I know that. Just, can we fix this?" I didn't even flinch. I'd heard enough from him to last a lifetime. Blocking him felt like wiping smudged fingerprints off glass. There was nothing left to see. Nothing worth revisiting. My best friend sent me a screenshot of a group chat. The rumor mill was in full spin. Some guests were furious, flew in from out of town for nothing. Vendors were demanding payment, deposits lost. One of his friends posted something cryptic like, "Play stupid games, win expensive prizes." I didn't reply, but I smiled. Not because it was petty, because it was poetic. Life has a rhythm when you stop forcing it. He must have realized at some point that he'd underestimated me, that I wasn't the quiet, passive woman he thought would just swallow the betrayal and walk down the aisle anyway. I think that's what stung the most. Not the exposure, not the money, but the fact that I beat him at his own game, without ever playing dirty. The fallout wasn't just emotional, it was financial. Eric's credit cards were maxed. The venue wouldn't refund anything this close to the date. The resort charged full price, non-refundable. I didn't have to lift a finger. His choices paid for my peace, and for once, that felt fair. Actions meet consequences. I wasn't celebrating his misery, but I wasn't apologizing for my freedom either. Friends started choosing sides. Some reached out to me, subtle and cautious, like they weren't sure where the line was. One woman, A distant cousin of his messaged me. I always thought something felt off about him. Good for you. Another. I wish I had your courage. It was strange, comforting even, how many people recognized pieces of their own stories in mine. I didn't feel alone, not anymore. He tried everything to get to me. Emails, flowers sent to my apartment. One letter, handwritten, slipped under my door, rambling apologies and promises he'd probably recycled before. I didn't read past the first line. I didn't need to. I already knew how the story ended. Not with a bang, but with a locked door and a woman who refused to answer it. Sometimes closure isn't a conversation. It's a choice. What surprised me most wasn't how he reacted. It was how calm I stayed through all of it. Like I'd finally learned to keep my hands off a fire that never wanted to warm me. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was finished. And there's a very specific kind of power in that, the quiet kind. The kind that doesn't need witnesses. I started sleeping better. Not because everything was perfect, but because I no longer shared my bed with anxiety disguised as affection. There's a difference between being alone and being lonely, and once you've tasted peace, even silence feels like company. I'd walk past our old favorite cafes, the florist we swore we'd use, the little restaurant where we once picked wedding cake flavors, and I didn't flinch. I'd already said goodbye. Long before the wedding was canceled. My neighbors started noticing the shift. One of them, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a stubborn cat, caught me in the elevator one day. "You look different," she said. "Lighter." I smiled. I think that's what happens when you stop carrying things that were never yours to hold. The lies, the hope, the heavy silence. I'd set them all down. And in their place, I was building something softer, braver, mine. The world didn't stop because he was hurting. That's the part he never understood. Women aren't required to be wreckage in the wake of betrayal. We don't owe anyone our breakdown just because they caused it. My healing wasn't performative. It wasn't loud, it just was. Day by day, decision by decision, I was becoming someone new, or maybe just returning to someone I'd always been beneath the noise. And somewhere I knew he was still reaching out, still hoping to rewrite the ending. But the story had already moved on. I wasn't looking back, because something unexpected was on its way. A twist I hadn't seen coming, a letter that would change everything, not because it hurt, but because it proved I'd dodged more than heartbreak. I'd escaped a lifetime of it. Coming home from the island, I felt like a different version of myself. Not a new woman exactly, just one who finally knew the difference between loving someone and losing yourself. I unpacked slowly. Hung up the robe I'd worn on the terrace, placed the last bottle of island wine on the kitchen counter. It felt like a souvenir from another life, one I'd closed the door on with both hands. Not long after, I was invited to speak at a women's conference. The topic was resilience, how we rebuild ourselves after being broken open. I almost said no. Sharing that part of my life still felt raw. But then I thought about all the women who had messaged me, commented on those photos, whispered their own stories in half-typed sentences. Maybe it was time to speak out loud. Maybe silence had done its job. So I stood on that stage in a soft cream blazer and steady heels, and I told the truth. Not every detail, not every betrayal, but the truth that mattered. That sometimes loving someone means letting go before they ruin what's left of you. That walking away doesn't make you cold. It makes you brave. The women in the audience nodded, some with tears in their eyes. I wasn't alone in this story. I never had been. Afterward, a woman came up to me. Silver hair, tired smile, eyes that had seen too much. She whispered, "I wish I'd left 20 years earlier." And that's when I knew. This wasn't just about me. It was about all of us. Every woman who'd stayed too long, kept too quiet, or believed too deeply in someone who didn't deserve it. I walked off that stage, knowing I had no regrets. A few months passed. The noise faded. The gossip slowed. Even Eric stopped trying to reach me. I thought that was the end of it. I truly did. Until one afternoon, I checked my mailbox and saw a cream envelope with no return address. The handwriting was neat, feminine. I knew, before I even opened it, that it wasn't from him. Somehow that made it worse. It was from her, the woman he'd cheated with. My stomach didn't drop. My hands didn't shake. I was too far removed for that now. Still, I sat down on the floor of my hallway and opened it right there, back against the door, sunlight stretching across the tiles. Her words were careful, hesitant, like she wasn't sure I'd even read them. But I did. She thanked me. Thanked me for leaving, for exposing it. She said she thought she'd won when I walked away, that she'd inherited the prize. But it didn't take long to realize what she'd really gotten. The lies. The secrecy, the rehearsed apologies. "He's already cheating again," she wrote. "I thought you should know. You didn't just escape heartbreak. You dodged a life sentence." And when I finished reading it, I didn't cry. I didn't feel smug or vindicated. Just still. Like a piece of the puzzle had finally clicked into place, and the picture was so much clearer than I ever expected. I folded the letter in half, stood up, and walked to the fireplace. And with hands that no longer shook, I dropped it in and watched the flame eat the words whole. The flames danced softly, like they understood the weight of what they were consuming. I stood there, watching the paper curl and blacken, until all that was left were glowing embers and a faint trace of smoke. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like release, like shedding the last layer of something that never fit me to begin with. As the last corner of the letter turned to ash, I whispered, more to myself than to anyone else. I wasn't the one left behind. He was. And I meant it. He lost something he never truly valued. I found something I never knew I'd been missing. The quiet kind of self-worth that doesn't need to be shouted to be real. The kind you carry in your spine, in your breath, in your stillness. Since then, life has been slower, softer. I drink my coffee without checking my phone for apologies. I go for walks without wondering if I'll run into ghosts. And when I look in the mirror, I see a woman I trust. Not because she's flawless, but because she stayed when no one else did. Because she chose herself, even when it would have been easier to disappear into the lie. People still ask what happened. I just smile. Let them wonder. Some stories don't need retelling. They just need to be lived through. And mine? It didn't end at the altar. It began the moment I walked away from it.